Kuzuzangpo La. Welcome to Bhutan e-learning program. I am Jamyang Siltim, teacher at Chuka Central School. This economics intended for the levels 9, 10, 11 and 12. So with this, today I will be teaching you on the topic basis of trade. Today I will be teaching you on the topic basis of trade. So before I go into the topic, let us recapitulate the lesson that we have studied in the previous class. So in the previous class, we learned about the meaning of trade. So let us recapitulate it again. That refers or is the exchange of goods and services that happens within and outside the country. We have also learned the types of trade, that is internal trade and external trade. We have also learned the difference between these two forms of trade, and also we learned the advantages and disadvantages of international trade. So today we are going to learn more about the basis of trade. I repeat one more time, more about the basis of trade. Now, by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to mention the reasons for trading and also examine the basis of international trade based on two theories. One is absolute cost theory, another one is comparative cost theory. And also you should be able to calculate the comparative cost theory with the help of opportunity cost and relative productivity ratio. Hope you got the general ideas about what we are going to learn today, right? Okay. Now, before we move into the topic deeper, let us ask ourselves, why do countries involved in trade? Why do you think countries involved in trade? I'll give you some more time. I'll give you 5 seconds to think. Your think time starts now. Yes, you're right. Thank you so much for a mental response. Yes. The first reason the countries trade because there's no individual country or region that can produce all the goods that is required. So therefore, they trade for that reason. The second reason is to earn profit. So when you hear the word profit, it's quite interesting, right? Profit. Why? Because profit is a regulatory force. It's one of the motivational force for individual and as well as for the nation. So therefore, the countries involved in trade. Why? Because they want to earn profit like us. And also, in order to promote trade relations with the other country, and also to outsell the surplus product to other country, which is known as went for surplus. The country also involved in trade to earn what? To earn foreign currency. That is US dollar. That can be any, but then in Bhutan, US dollar. That's why people's involved in trade, or countries involved in trade. And also the reason could be for economic development. Simple example, Bhutan has the advantage because of international trade to import the technology and machines. and which can be used for further development of a nation. And this happens only because of trade. We also trade. Why? Because or due to the differences in cost. So today I'll be focusing more on the last reason, that is trade place due to differences or due to difference in cost of production. Can you repeat one more time? Trade takes place due to difference in cost of production. Now we are done with the reasons, and we know why countries or why different countries involved in trade. Now let us further explore on the last reason. Yes, different kinds of a trade or all kinds of a trade involved either that in this kind of a trade people involved and also the country involved. So all kinds of a trade take place due to the differences in the cost of production. The country will specialize in productions of that commodities which they can produce at the lower cost of production. And country will import those commodities which has higher cost of production. So therefore, the basis of international trade is explained based on the differences in based on the differences in the cost of production. And this theory can be explained with the help of absolute cost theory and comparative cost theory. Now let us move into the first topic, that is absolute cost theory. According to Adam Smith, the fundamental basis of international trade is the difference in absolute cost. One more time, the difference in absolute cost. Now my question is, what is meant by absolute cost? Okay, thank you. Yes, absolute cost refers to when a nation can produce a commodity at a lower cost compared with another country. Now let us read the definitions all together. Absolute cost refers to when a nation can produce a commodity at a lower cost compared to another country. So see now, in this definition, one country has advantage in producing one commodities at lower cost. So in this kind of situation, what the country will do is, the country will involve in trade. And this differences in absolute cost results due to the fertility in soil, due to the climatic condition, and due to resource endowment and technology. The country specializes in production of that commodity or one commodity which they can produce at lower cost comparing with another country, and imports that commodity which the cost of production is very high. Therefore, we have to understand that country has always advantage to export or to specialize or to produce that commodity which they can produce at lower cost of production, and the country imports those commodities which the cost of production is very high or when they have absolute cost disadvantage. This absolute cost theory can be explained with the help of this table. In this table, we know that there is a two countries involved. One is Bhutan and one is Japan. So this table shows the cost of production incurred by Bhutan and Japan in producing 1 metric ton of mushroom and apple. As per this table, we know that Bhutan can produce 1 metric ton of mushroom at Newton 1500, and Bhutan can produce 1 metric ton of apples at Newton 2000. And on the other hand, Japan can produce 1 metric ton of mushroom at Newton 2000, and Japan can produce apples at Newton 1000. Now I have a question for you. Now tell me, which country has absolute advantage in producing mushroom? You just compare the cost of production. Which country possesses a cheaper cost of production? Through this table, we can analyze that Bhutan has absolute cost advantage in producing mushroom, and Japan has absolute cost advantage in producing apple. Now my next question is why? Why? The reason is, so according to this table, we know that Bhutan has absolute advantage in producing mushroom and Japan has absolute advantage in producing apple. So with this, now we are done with the absolute cost theory. Now let us move to the next theory, that is comparative cost theory. Let us define this comparative cost together. So, comparative cost refers to a situation when one country can produce both the commodities at lower cost compared with another country. I repeat one more time. Comparative cost refers to a situation when one country can produce both the commodities at lower cost compared with another country. So, however, even the country has absolute advantage in production of both the goods, this country will not specialize in producing that two goods. Instead, the country specializes in production of that commodity which can be produced more efficiently. On the other hand, the country which has got absolute disadvantage in production of both the commodity will still produce the goods and concentrate on production of that commodities in which it has lower comparative disadvantages and ignore the one for which it has higher or greater comparative disadvantage. This theory can be explained using the concept of opportunity cost or the production possibility curve, and also explained with the method of relative productivity ratio. Let me remind you one more time, this comparative theory can be explained with the help of opportunity cost and relative productivity ratio. Now let us do one exercise together. This is a data showing the cost of production incurred by Bhutan and Japan in production of mushroom and apple. As per this table, we know that Bhutan has absolute advantage in producing both the commodities, that is mushroom and apple. Why? Because cost of producing these two commodities is very very less compared with Japan. And similarly, we know that Bhutan can produce more of mushroom and apple at the minimum cost of production. On the other hand, Japan has absolute disadvantage in production of both the commodities. Why? Because with the fixed or given resources, Japan can produce less amount of mushroom and less amount of apple compared with Bhutan. Now let us go and explore further, and let's do the calculations of opportunity cost. Now let's do the calculations of opportunity cost. Before we do calculations, let me remind you what is meant by opportunity cost. To be specific, opportunity cost refers like in order to produce more of one commodities, we have to sacrifice another commodities, because we cannot produce both the commodity at a time. Why? Because the resources are very limited. So because of this fact, in order to produce one commodity more, we have to forego another commodity. So this is known as opportunity cost. Now the calculations of opportunity cost for Bhutan. Now let us calculate the opportunity cost of producing mushroom in terms of apple in Bhutan. Now you have to keep in mind, or you have to remember this data. So according to this data, the opportunity cost, in order to produce 8,000 kg of apple, Bhutan should sacrifice 12,000 kg of mushroom. And in order to produce 1 kg of mushroom, Bhutan has to sacrifice how much? So the calculation should be 8,000 divided by 12,000 kg. So therefore, we get the answer. The opportunity cost of producing 1 kg of mushroom is 0.66 kg of apples in terms of Bhutan. Now we are done with the calculations of opportunity costs of producing mushroom in Bhutan. Now let us again calculate. We have to calculate the opportunity cost of producing apple in Bhutan. Meaning that we have to calculate how much should Bhutan sacrifice the mushroom in order to produce apple. Opportunity cost of producing apple in terms of mushroom. So in order to produce 8,000 kg of apple, the country should sacrifice 12,000 kg of mushroom. Similarly, in order to produce 1 kg of apple, the Bhutan has to sacrifice 1.5 kg of mushroom in terms of Bhutan. So we have done, or we have calculated the opportunity cost of producing mushroom and opportunity cost of producing apple in Bhutan. Now we have to calculate the opportunity cost for another country, that is Japan. Let us calculate for mushroom. In order to produce 4,000 kg of mushroom, Japan has to sacrifice 6,000 kg of apple. The opportunity cost of producing mushroom in terms of apple in Japan is 1.5 kg of apple in Japan. Now we are done with the calculations of opportunity cost for mushroom, and now let us further calculate the opportunity cost of producing apple in Japan. Now in order to produce 6,000 kg of apple in Japan, the country has to sacrifice 4,000 kg of mushroom. See, in order to produce 6,000 kg of apple, the country has to sacrifice 4,000 kg of mushroom. In order to produce 1 kg of mushroom, the country has to sacrifice 0.66 kg of mushroom. So therefore, the opportunity cost of producing 1 kg of apple is 0.66 kg of mushroom. Now we are done with the calculations part, and now let us see the point of specialization. Bhutan should sacrifice 0.66 kg of apple in order to produce 1 kg of mushroom. And similarly, Bhutan should sacrifice 1.5 kg of apple in order to produce mushroom. On the other hand, Japan sacrifices 1.5 kg of mushroom to produce apple, and Japan sacrifices 0.66 kg of apple to produce mushroom. Now with this data or with this answer, we know that the sacrificing cost is very minimal or is very less if Bhutan can focus in production of mushroom. Why? Because the opportunity cost of producing mushroom is 0.66 kg of apple. On the other hand, Japan should specialize in production of apple. Why? Because sacrificing cost of apple is 0.66. With the opportunity cost, we can also find the point of specialization. And we know that through these calculations, we know that Bhutan should specialize in production of mushroom and Japan should specialize in production of apple. Why? Because Bhutan has got a relatively lower opportunity cost in producing mushroom than apple, and similarly Japan should focus in producing apple because the opportunity cost of producing apple is relatively lower. Now, having learned what is meant by opportunity cost and calculated the opportunity cost for both the countries, now let us represent this data in the production possibility curve. So we use a production possibility curve to explain the opportunity cost. To be specific, comparative cost theory can be explained by using a production possibility curve and also by opportunity costs. So this opportunity cost can be illustrated or can be explained with the help of production possibility curve. Now what is meant by production possibility curve? So production possibility curve shows a various combination of two goods which can be produced with the given available resources. Now let us use a production possibility curve to explain the opportunity cost that we have calculated and to show the comparative cost advantage and comparative cost theory. So let us draw the production possibility curve for Bhutan and let us use this data. On the x-axis we have mushroom and on the y-axis we have apple. 0 is a point of origin and this is a production possibility curve for Bhutan. In this production possibility curve, we know that the maximum amount of apple that Bhutan can produce is 8,000 kg. So in order to produce maximum amount of apple, the country should divert all the resources and sacrifice completely in producing mushroom. So in point A, we know that Bhutan can produce 8,000 kg of apple and 0 kg of mushroom. Similarly, in point B, this shows that the maximum amount that Bhutan can produce mushroom when all resources are diverted and all the resources are used in mushroom, production of mushroom. So at point B, Bhutan can produce 12,000 kg of mushroom and 0 kg of apple. So through this data, we know that when we decrease in the productions of one good, we can increase the production of another goods. By how? By diverting our resources. And this arrow shows that Bhutan has now focused all the resources in producing mushroom and diverted resources in producing mushroom. So this is all about the production possibility curve for Bhutan. And through this production possibility curve, now let us find the point of specialization. Let us find the point of specialization. According to this, it's more advantage if Bhutan is specialized in production of mushroom. And point B is a specialization point for Bhutan. Now we are done with the production possibility curve for Bhutan. And now similarly, let us again draw a production possibility curve for Japan by using this table, by using this information. Now the production possibility curve for Japan. On the x-axis we have mushroom, and on the y-axis we have apple. 0 is a point of origin, C and D is a production possibility curve for Japan. So at point C, Japan can produce 6,000 kg of apple and cannot produce mushroom, meaning 0 production of mushroom. And at point D, Japan can produce 4,000 kg of mushroom, 0 kg of apple. Now, which is the point of specialization? Now you have to tell me, is it C or is it D? The point of specialization is C. Why? Because Japan has comparative advantage in production of apple. If Japan focuses in production of apple, the sacrificing cost is very less and the opportunity cost of producing apple is also very less. So therefore, Japan should specialize in production of apple, and point C is a specialization point. Now we are done with the production possibility curve for Bhutan as well as for Japan, and we also know the point of specialization. With this, we are done with the one method to calculate comparative cost theory by using an opportunity cost and a production possibility curve. Now we have another method, that is relative productivity ratio. Now let us find and calculate. Again we are going to use the same example. We are going to use the same example, and we will find the relative productivity ratio for both the countries. Now let us find, yes, we are going to use the same data. Now let us find the relative productivity ratio for Bhutan, producing apple and mushroom. Now let us find for apple. So the formula is the relative productivity ratio of producing apple equals to the unit of apple produced by Bhutan divided by the unit of apple produced by Japan. Am I making some sense? Now there is one trick that you have to remember. If we are to find the relative productivity ratio of Bhutan, we have to keep the unit of production of any commodities at the numerator, and then in denominator we have to keep the other. So we are finding the relative productivity ratio of producing apple in Bhutan. So 8,000 kg of apple divided by 6,000 kg of apples. So the answer is relative productivity ratio of producing apple is 1.33 kg. Now again let us find the relative productivity ratio of producing mushroom. The formula is same. The unit of mushroom produced by Bhutan divided by the unit of mushroom produced by Japan. So through these calculations, the relative productivity ratio of producing mushroom in Bhutan is 3 kg. Having calculated the relative productivity ratio for mushroom and apple in Bhutan, now let us just compare two relative productivity ratio. So according to this relative productivity ratio, we know that Bhutan should specialize in production of mushroom. Why? Because Bhutan has the relative advantage in producing mushroom than the apple. Because we can produce 3 kg. The relative productivity ratio is high in terms of mushroom than the apple. So therefore, Bhutan should focus in production of mushroom. Now we are done with the relative productivity ratio of mushroom and apple in Bhutan. Now, again, we have to do it same for Japan as well. So this is the conclusion from this finding. Relative ratio for mushroom is higher than apple in Bhutan. Therefore, Bhutan should focus in production of mushroom. Okay? The relative ratio for mushroom is higher than apple in Bhutan, and therefore Bhutan should specialize in production of mushroom than the apple. Now, let us calculate for Japan as well. The relative productivity ratio of producing apple and mushroom in Japan. Formula is same. Now we are calculating a relative productivity ratio of producing apple. So now we have to keep the production of apple by Japan in numerators. Okay, it's a simple tricks. So unit of apple produced by Japan divided by unit of apple produced by Bhutan. So with this, we get the answer 0.75 kgs. Let us do it for the mushroom. The formula is same again. Unit of mushroom produced by Japan divided by unit of mushroom produced by Bhutan. The answer is 0.33 kg. Therefore, relative ratio for apple is higher than mushroom in Japan. Now my question here is, should Japan focus in production of mushroom or apple? And why? Because the relative ratio is very high. So we use relative productivity ratio to calculate the comparative cost theory. And with this relative productivity ratio, we can also find the point of specialization for both the countries. Now I'm done with the teaching of the concept, and before I close this lesson or session, let us recapitulate what we have learned. We have learned what is meant by comparative cost. So comparative cost is a situation when one country can produce both the commodities at lower cost of production or at lower cost compared with another country. So this is the definitions of comparative cost, and we have also learned what is meant by opportunity cost, and we use this concept in calculating the theory of comparative cost advantage. And we have also used the production possibility curve to represent the calculations done by the opportunity cost. And finally, we have also used the relative productivity ratio to calculate the comparative cost theory. My job is done, now is your job. Now you have to do some follow-up activities, and please, when you reach back to your school, directly you have to submit your assignment to your economics teacher or concerned subject teacher. And this is the assessment. So let me just read the questions for you. Japan produced 3 cars or 9 motorcycles. India can produce 4 cars or 8 motorcycles. The information is given in the table. I hope you have captured this picture, right? Now the question is, what is the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit of each product? Which country has comparative advantage in producing cars? Which country has comparative advantage in producing motorcycle? Why? So this is the assignment you have to do, and then once you reach in the school, you have to submit to your concerned subject teacher. With this, thank you so much for being with me, and see you next time with more interesting topic. Thank you so much.